Hello. So, I thought I would talk about one of my favorite, actually my favorite model in the Tau army, and I think in 40k in general. The Ghostkeel got me back into Tau when it was released. So I want to say something close to 10 years ago. Not quite though. It's not new, but it's not old. But it is just such a cool looking model. Just the super huge stealth suit kind of thing. I've actually got two of them. I've got this one and I've got my green guy over here too. I love this model. So I wanted to talk about, well, everything surrounding the Ghostkeel. You'll have to excuse me for this video. I am just getting over a cold, so I'm going to be chugging water the entire time. But the Ghostkeel, like a lot of other units in the new Tau Codex, has seen a lot of improvements. So it's seen a lot of small improvements that all build up into a really overall big improvement. But there's one small downgrade that I'm not a huge fan of. Thankfully, though, the positives heavily outweigh the negatives for the Ghostkeel. So let's get started. We'll have a look at some stats to start us off. So in the new codex, let me just get my book open to the right page here. It's still in the elite section, and we'll go over just the stat spread to begin with. It still has movement 12, weapon skill 5, ballistic skill 4, strength 6. Its toughness went up to toughness 7, which from 6 to 7 is already a massive boost. I love that. It went up to 12 wounds from 10, which is good. I'm not going to complain. It's not going to make a huge change in a lot of games, but it may in some. 2 extra wounds is nothing to complain about. 3 attacks, I think that's the same. Leadership 9, I think that went up from leadership 8. Regardless, that's not really going to change much because there's only ever one in a unit. That's not really going to matter unless there's some sort of power or ability that can damage the Ghostkeel that's based on its leadership. Some sort of psychic power or something like that might affect it. But either way, it went up, so that's good. And 3+ armor, that's remained the same. So overall, a steady toughness boost with toughness 7 and 12 wounds. Really nice. Eerily, though, in the profile, since it does have more than 10 wounds, the profile will degrade as it loses wounds, like all other models that have that do. The movement will go down from 12 to 8 to 4 inches. The ballistic skill, though, is interesting. So it starts at 4+, like most Tau units. Then it will go down to 5+. But on its last 3 wounds, it's still at 5+. I'm not sure whether that's something special for the Ghostkeel or whether that is a typo. I haven't seen anything to correct it yet, so we can just run that when it's on its worst profile, it still hits on 5s, which is cool. And also its attacks go down, but that, Tau in combat doesn't really matter. Although, the Ghostkeel did also see an improvement to close combat capability. Not its ability to hit, but its ability to deal damage. So it was given a weapon profile called Ghostkeel Fists, where normally it would attack at strength 6, AP nothing, 1 damage, which is what happens when you don't have an actual melee weapon. You'll just use your strength and you assume the damage is 1. But now it's at +1 strength, -1 AP, and 2 damage. So it attacks at strength 7, -1, 2 damage. It punches with an autocannon. That's pretty cool. Now, you still got to hit with it, of course, which is kind of hard to do. But there's a decent chance that if this thing gets assaulted by, I don't know, a squad of Space Marines, he can punch one to death. That'd be kind of cool. So that's a nice improvement. And as usual, it comes with its 2 drones. And thankfully, when they made the point cost, they've included the 2 drones in it. So you don't have to calculate those in. They come with it. They're part of the unit automatically. You can't not take the drones. You have to take the two, what are they called? Stealth drones? I believe they're stealth drones. Stealth drones, yeah, two stealth drones. The stealth drones have the standard drone profile where they have 1 wound, 4 up armor save, no invulnerable, no weapons, nothing to worry about there. Although they do give a bonus to the Ghostkeel that's a little confusing. So let's go over that to begin with. Now, unfortunately, or well, it depends how you like to organize your things. I think it's kind of annoying where I want to check the drones, so I have to go to the drone section, which it's nice to have all the drones in one section in this book, but at the same time, I'm looking at my Ghostkeel and I can't check my drones. Anyhow, the stealth drone has the stealth field generator ability. This unit cannot be selected as the target for ranged attacks unless it is the closest eligible target to the firing model or the firing model is within 18 inches of it. So if this thing is farther than 18 inches away and there are other units that are eligible for targeting, you cannot target the Ghostkeel and its drones. So it's the whole unit. It's not just the drones, it's not just the Ghostkeel, it's the whole unit. They all count as one. So that's how that works. That's what the drones do to help out the Ghostkeel. So that's kind of nice. Then, to further add to the stealth capabilities, the Ghostkeel model, it says in the abilities, while this unit's Ghostkeel Battlesuit model has any wounds remaining, each time a ranged attack targets this unit, subtract 1 from the attack's hit roll. So that's another straight up improvement. Firstly, again, it declares it as the unit. So the Ghostkeel has to have wounds remaining for this to be active, but the whole unit gets a -1 to hit from ranged weapons at any range. It used to be that it was from 6 inches away or from outside 6 inches, and then earlier it was from outside an even farther range. Now it's just straight up ranged attacks are a -1 to hit it, which is real nice. And again, that's for the whole unit. So they'll all get that, the drones, the Ghostkeel. But that's only while the Ghostkeel is alive. So the inability to target outside of 18 or whether it's the closest, that's what the drones do. And then the -1 to hit with ranged attacks, that's what the Ghostkeel does, but they each benefit each other. The drones and the Ghostkeel get those while those models are all alive. Now, if you've got 1 drone or 2 drones, the effect is still the same. So they've got the same effects. So if you lose 1 drone, don't worry about it. You still get that untargetability. Another area where they saw solid improvements, again, was weaponry. This doesn't necessarily only go for the Ghostkeel, as a lot of the weapons they have access to are accessible to other Tau units. But the main weapons did see a solid bump, which is real nice. So let's go through them now. The only one that didn't really see an improvement is the Fusion Blaster, which saw sort of a side grade, I guess. So it used to be the Fusion Blaster, if you're within half range, you'd roll 2 dice and you pick the highest for the damage. That's the old Melta rule. And then it just got replaced in this one where it's the new Melta rule where if you're within half range, you roll a d6 and you add 2 to the damage. It could be better because you get that extra +2, so you have a max of 8 damage. It's really like it, but also you roll 2 dice for the other one, pick the highest, so you could get higher there. You never know. Either way, it's that's why I call it a side grade. But it got that boost, the d6 +2 if you're within half range. The Fusion Blaster has remained the same though. 18-inch range, Assault 1, Strength 8, -4 AP, d6 damage, or d6 +2 if you're within half. So it can take, for its secondary weapon, it can take 2 Fusion Blasters like that. It can take 2 Flamers, Tau Flamers. And those, again, those improved right, like straight off the bat. 1, they went up 12-inch range, nice. And their Assault d6 +2 hits, nice. Or for its secondary, it could take 2 burst cannons. And those went up, of course, by getting 2 more shots to 6 shots each. So you've got 3 choices for your secondaries: 2 fusion blasters, 2 burst cannons, 2 flamers. The flamers and the burst cannons are free. They're baked into the cost of the unit. The fusion blasters, of course, like a lot of fusion blasters taken on other units, they're a little more expensive. They're 5 points per fusion blaster, so a 10 point to get them both. You can't mix and match. So you can't take a flamer and a fusion blaster, a burst cannon and a flamer, or whatever. You have to take 2 of the same weapon. So effectively, you're paying 10 points for 2 fusion blasters instead of the other 2 options. Now, with options here, that's basically one of the only options for the model, and it's 160 points for the whole thing. I find it just a touch overcosted. I don't think the Ghostkeel is a bad unit in any way, but I think it's just a touch overcosted at 160. If you take those fusion blasters, you're going up to 170, of course. Now, let's go over the main weapons before I get distracted by other things. The main weapons you've got are, I've even got the little models for them here, the Fusion Collider, which, as it sounds, is fusion-y and does similar things to fusion blasters, but better. So that one used to be 18-inch range also. Now it's up to 24. It also used to be strength 8, like regular fusion blasters. Now it's strength 9. It's still AP -4, but that's still great. And the damage is D6 or D6 plus 2 in half range. Half range now is 12, though, because of the max range of 24. And you're no longer rolling for the number of shots. You just get 3. Beautiful. So 3 shots, 24-inch range, strength 9, AP -4, D6 damage, or D6 plus 2 if you're within half range. And you can take this all together. You can get the Fusion Collider and 2 Fusion Blasters and have a fusion suit. And deal a bunch of like hard anti-tank damage, which is real nice. Or the other option is the Cyclic Ion Raker, this guy right here. So this is the more bigger number of shots weapon, but it's a pretty solid weapon. And like a lot of ion weapons, you have the option to overcharge. The Cyclic Ion Raker saw a huge boost to range from 24 inches to 36. Heavy 6, so no longer rolling for a number of shots either. You get 6 shots. Strength 7, -2 AP, 2 damage. Respectable profile. If you overcharge, the strength goes up to 8 and the damage goes up to 3. And of course, like other ion weapons, if you do overcharge, mortal wounds to the model on 1s. Interestingly, though, each time an unmodified hit roll of 1 is made for an attack with this weapon profile, the bearer's unit suffers 1 mortal wound after shooting with this weapon. So if you get a mortal wound, you can shrug one of them off onto the drones if you like, or both, depending. Keep in mind, though, if you lose both your drones, you're losing that inability to be targeted outside 18 unless you're the closest. So something to consider. So you've got the Cyclic Ion Raker, the ion weapon that you can overcharge, or you've got the Fusion Collider, which is the closer range but more damaging, fewer shots kind of weapon. Both of them are pretty good. The Ghostkeel suit has never really been at least in my opinion, I find it's not really it doesn't really carry much weight in terms of the damage dealing or anything like that. It's more of a harassment, psychological warfare, annoyance for your opponent to deal with kind of thing. Because it's big, it has some scary weapons, but they're not really terrifying. But if it gets close, it can do some damage, so it's got to be taken care of. It's one of those things, it's a headache for your opponent to deal with. That's what the suit is. It's a headache for your opponent to deal with. You can equip it in a variety of ways. There's actually a sort of long-ish range harassment variant that you can use that can be kind of fun, where you can equip it with the long-range Cyclic Ion Blaster. It doesn't matter what the secondary is. Maybe go for something cheap like burst cannons and leave it farther back and have it shoot at things and be untargetable and holding objectives or just being annoying and hard to hit. 36 isn't that long range, keep that in mind, but this thing can move pretty well. The issue with the Ghostkeel, and this has always been the issue with the Ghostkeel, is that predominantly its weapons, now outside the Cyclic Ion Raker, all its weapons are pretty close range, which means if you want to shoot them, you got to get close to your enemy. Doesn't mean you have to get close to all of your enemy. So it kind of excels at isolating units that are sort of separated from the rest of your opponent's army. Because if you charge forth, and I don't mean charge like assault phase, but like if you move really close up with the Ghostkeel, suddenly all those cool buffs don't really mean a heck of a lot, and you open yourself up to the Ghostkeel's big weaknesses, which are psychic powers, because psychic powers don't care about not being able to hit you or -1 to hit and shooting. They don't care about that. Or targeted for shooting. And then a lot of the support systems that it can get have nothing to mitigate psychic powers or getting charged and getting attacked in close combat. Because unlike stealth suits, Ghostkeels don't have a -1 to hit in combat. They only have that -1 to hit for shooting. So this has been the problem with the Ghostkeel, is to get its weapons to be effective, you have to get close to at least something. And this is where the kind of delicate play lies. So let's go over the other war gear that it can attach, these support systems. And this is where I mentioned a downgrade that it got. This is where the downgrade kind of happens. I mentioned all the upgrades, by the way, so let's go over those again just very quickly. Higher toughness, more wounds, better weaponry, and better overall stealth buffs. Those all got improved. The one downgrade is that the support systems have become incredibly limited. And some of them are good, but there was one before that was the best thing to give a Ghostkeel, and it was a shield generator. Used to be able to give a shield generator a 4+ invulnerable save to the Ghostkeel. You can't anymore, which is just too bad. Because a 4+ invulnerable save on something that's already hard to hit, that's even tougher now, that has more wounds, that can't be targeted by certain units, is just even more of a pain. Having that extra shielding is just so nice. Can't be done anymore, unfortunately. There aren't that many options. So the support systems you can get. Firstly, you get a drone controller for free. That is just attached to the model. It just exists there. I don't know why it has a drone controller. It's got 2 drones in the unit that have nothing to do with shooting, so that's not it. The 2 models are already in the unit, so it doesn't have to worry about the Savior Protocol stratagem being 3 inches away, because it'll always be close enough. So that's something. So I'm guessing that it could use other drone units to soak up wounds or soak up a shot from farther away with the Savior Protocol stratagem. Or you could devise a strategy where you have a brick of gun drones with a Ghostkeel behind that will not be able to be targeted. So you could have a whole brick of gun drones that are getting the improvements from a drone controller while the Ghostkeel is behind, and it's sort of given them that buff in the command phase. They can move forward and cause a bunch of problems, and the Ghostkeel can kind of stick behind it. The issue with that is, though, that the Ghostkeel is still not necessarily getting close. It could be, though. It all depends on the battlefield layout. So either way, you get a drone controller, so it doesn't matter. It's not an option. It's not like you have to take it over something else. You just get it. You have a drone controller. So always remember that. If you've got drones, loose drones in your army or something else, you always have that in your pocket as a freebie. It's icing on the cake. Then you have 2 options for 1 slot for your support systems. Excuse me. So Your two options, you've got early warning override, which is a common option that we'll see along a bunch of other units, which is basically for one time you get to overwatch without spending a command point, and you overwatch on a 5+. That one's free. So you can take that in your slot and it's free, no points cost, which is nice. So it could be especially nice, like let's say you have the Ghostkeel set up in this fashion where you've got 2 burst cannons and then the cyclic ion raker. That will get you 18 shots in Overwatch. They're all hitting on 5s. And the cyclic ion raker shots are particularly dangerous. So that could be kind of cool. I mean, you could use it for the fusion also and hope you get lucky and one fusion shot goes through and really hurts something. And it'll almost certainly be in close range if something's charging it. So it's never a bad call to go for an early warning override. Not bad. The other option is better, but it costs you points. The other option is a flare launcher, and this one is unique to the Ghostkeel. They're the only unit that can get this. Each time the bearer would lose a wound as the result of a ranged attack with a strength characteristic of 7 or more, roll a d6. On a 5+, that wound is not lost. So a lot of things, little check boxes have to go off here. It's got to be a ranged attack. It's only the Ghostkeel model. This does not apply to the drones because it does say each time the bearer. So the bearer is the Ghostkeel. He's got the flare launcher. So it doesn't apply to the drones. Each time the bearer would lose a wound as the result of a ranged attack with a strength characteristic of 7 or more. So it's got to be strength 7 or more. But that's pretty good, actually. It's kind of nice. Roll a d6. On a 5-up, the wound is not lost. So it's a 5-up, feel no pain roll for strength 7 or higher shooting, which is really not bad. I mean, heavy shooting coming in at this thing is really, really dangerous. The issue, though, is so is a lot of light shooting. Like, this guy's worst enemy is a whole bunch of flamers, for example. A whole bunch of flame weapons, because they wouldn't roll to hit, and so they mitigate a whole bunch of the targeting problems, and then he wouldn't get that bonus from that. But it's also toughness 7, 3-up armor, 12 wounds, so you've got ways of dealing with that as well. Keep in mind as well, because you've got the 2 drones and the Ghostkeel, when it's being targeted, the drones count as having the same toughness as the unit that they're with. So they count as toughness 7 drones, even though they're supposed to be toughness 4. So you could take a flare launcher for 15 points. It's a little steep. So in its most expensive configuration, if you've got the Fusion Collider and the 2 Fusion Blasters, I mean, Fusion Collider or Cyclic Ion Raker, doesn't matter, they're the same cost. But the 2 Fusion Blasters, and you take the flare launcher, that will cost you 185 points, which is a little steep for what you're getting. Just a little bit. Just in comparison to a lot of the other models that do really, really, really well, I feel like it's often a struggle to find a place for a Ghostkeel. It's not a bad unit by any measure. I don't think so. And if you take a Ghostkeel, you're not going to, just lose games. It's just that it's a lot of points to invest in a distraction type unit. It can do a bit of heavy hitting, but it doesn't have the core keyword, so it can't take advantage of a lot of things that happen with core. Things like rerolls and buffs and other things like that. Its weapons are pretty good, but it doesn't have many shots, and it's still just a Tau model, so it's still got that 4+ ballistic skill. You can get marker lights, which are nice. And it can do a fair bit of damage if it does hit, especially with all those fusion guns. You could knock out a tank. Yeah, sure. So something to consider as well is the fact that it can still infiltrate. It can still deploy out from your deployment zone, but be careful. You don't necessarily want to do this. So it can deploy farther out, but this also means that it'll be easier to target, and it might be the only thing your opponent can target on the first couple of turns, depending on your movement, how you're moving around. So it might get knocked off the table before you even get to do anything with it. So with units like that that can deploy outside your deployment zone, it doesn't mean you have to just because they can do that, but it's an option. So what the Ghostkeel has, what it really brings to the table is a lot of these options. And that's, I think, why it costs the way that it does. I think it still should be, like, honestly, if you brought down from 160 to like 150 or 145, it'd be just fine. It's got a lot of options, though. It's got great stealth capability. It's got the ability to harass and take ground. It can fly, so it can move over terrain, which is really nice. It's got a solid movement speed. It's got decent weapons. So overall, it's got a lot of parts that work well for it. The problem is it's hard to get all those parts to work in tandem. In fact, it's nearly impossible to get all those parts to work in tandem, the defensive and offensive aspects. And so it's going to be doing a thing. Don't try to get it to do all the things it can do, basically. Don't try to get it to deploy out forward and then also not be shot and then do some damage. And you're going to have to pick and choose. It's a very strategic model to use. It's a very cool one, though. So let's see. Have I missed anything? I don't think so. One thing, too, to mention is that because it is, of course, a battlesuit, it's also a vehicle now. So keep that in mind. It's got the vehicle keyword. So anything that keys off of in terms of stratagems or your opponent's weaponry or anything like that, it does have the vehicle keyword. Fly as well, jetpack, battlesuit. Obviously, it'll get the sept tenants. It does explode, so it'll deal D3 mortal wounds within 6 inches, so it can explode and deal damage. And it also has the access to the exploding stratagem, which is really fun. So let's go over a couple stratagems here for a second and see what we can use for the Ghostkeel. There's obviously Savior Protocols, which is using a drone to negate an attack effectively. The one I was thinking of was Failsafe Detonator. And the Ghostkeel just fits into a nice little niche with this stratagem. We'll see how. Use this stratagem in any phase. When a battlesuit model from your army is destroyed, Ghostkeel is a battlesuit. Before removing that model from play, instead of using any rules that are triggered when that model is destroyed, e.g. the explodes ability, roll d6 for each unit within 3 inches of that model. Adding 1 to the roll if the destroyed model has a wounds characteristic of 12 or more. The Ghostkeel model has 12 wounds. So it fits into that category with that +1. On a 3 to 5, so for the Ghostkeel, it's a 2 to 5, that unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. On a 6+, that unit suffers 3 mortal wounds. So if you roll a 6, that's 3 mortal wounds. If you roll a 5, that's still 3 mortal wounds because you're adding 1 to it. So anywhere from 2 to 4, with your +1 added already, you'll be dealing D3 mortal wounds to any units, yours included, so keep that in mind. But if you've got a Ghostkeel that's rushed up into your opponent's face and then gets destroyed, and it's been surrounded by a few units, you can make it explode and deal a bunch of damage to things, which could be kind of nice. So that's one, and it's only a CP for that. And it's a nice, I like spending a CP when I've lost a unit and then have it deal damage to something and be like, okay, the loss doesn't feel so bad now. We have got Backup AI, which is the one that allows you to count as your top bracketing for when you're choosing your profile. So if the Ghostkeel has lost a bunch of wounds, For 1 CP in your command phase, you can spend this and it'll count as though it's got full wounds for shooting, for movement, and so on. We've got, let's see, what else? No, Wall of Mirrors. So like stealth suits, the Ghostkeel can take advantage of Wall of Mirrors, which will allow it at the end of the movement phase to move off 1 table edge if it's close enough to it. It's got to be within 9 inches, wholly within 9 inches of battlefield edge. You remove it from the battlefield, and in your next turn's reinforcement step, you bring it in within 6 inches of any of the battlefield edges. So a cool way to gain ground or maneuver around your opponent. Also fully adding to the ability of the Ghostkeel to really move around, to either deploy out or to move quickly. So it has some solid mobility. And then otherwise, anything else that would apply to battlesuits effectively. Strike and Fade is one as well. So Strike and Fade is the one for Tau Empire Jetpack, which it is. And you select it at the beginning of your shooting phase, and after you shoot, you can move back. So that could be a way for you to move your suit forward, fire your shots, and then you'd be able to move back, although it's only 6 inches. And this does cost you a command point. So there's that. And then, of course, Repulsor Impact Field, which would be kind of fun. That would pair nicely, actually, with the Early Warning Override, where you could use Overwatch for free. You would hit on 5s, and then when your opponent's charging the battlesuit, it would get a -2 to that charge against the battlesuit, which would be your Ghostkeel. So you could do that as well. Yeah, a few things here that are usable for the Ghostkeel. So overall, it's a unit with a lot of variety, a lot of options. It's kind of a, I hesitate to say jack of all trades, because it doesn't, I don't know if it does everything, but it does a lot of things, and it can do them okay. I think the best niche for it is as a peripheral harassment unit, where it can move just outside of range of your opponent. It can be annoying, just enough to cause some problems for anything that gets too close. It can move around through stratagems to get to other board edges, things like that. But it's just, in my opinion, a touch overcosted, just a little bit. I think it's just in comparison to a lot of the other units that it doesn't seem quite as good. But I think, though, now that I'm considering it and talking about it, there's a lot that it can do. There's a lot that it can do. The issue, as I'd mentioned before, is you're probably not going to be able to do all of those things with the Ghostkeel, because if you try to do all of those things, you're going to end up with a very, very dead Ghostkeel very quickly. Now, that's going to do it for this video. Thanks for watching.